There you are again. So, today, I'm kind of starting my long journey into the Halo Master Chief Collection. And, there's a lot of games in this collection. So, I don't know if I'll lose interest in it like I did with some other, kicks that I got into. Not naming names. By the way, I'm still going to finish those, just it's slowed down. And so, I'm starting the first chapter chronologically in this fine collection on the Xbox One. And the question is, how's the first chapter handle Halo Reach? The remaster of Halo Reach on the Xbox One. It has some problems. I should get into it, shouldn't I?
This is the Pillar of Autumn. Clear away.
Okay, so to start off, you would think that in the Master Chief Collection, any new game added to the collection would be a free edition. You paid for the collection, why not have a free edition? Not the case. You see, ODST is $4. And Halo Reach is $10 to add on to the collection. So essentially they're kind of like DLC. And I already had Halo Reach for the 360. Could play it backwards compatible with Xbox One. But I wanted to see the improvements. I mean, obviously this was going to be a better version than the 360 version. Right? Wrong. In some ways, the 360 version is the definitive version to play as. Why, I don't know, but it is in some cases. So let me explain to you. In the 360 version, how it worked was whatever you played. Campaign, Firefight, multiplayer, you would get points for playing any of them. And as you played, you could use those points to unlock pieces of armor for your unique to you Spartan. Your Spartan in the campaign is uniquely Noble 6. It's your Spartan. You get to customize the sex, the color, the armor pieces, everything. And as you play the campaign, you could unlock more and more pieces. As you play Firefight, you would unlock more and more pieces. Now, some of these pieces were ridiculously priced, like you needed 100,000 credit points to unlock one piece, and you would only unlock like maybe 100 credits every Firefight game. So it was ridiculous, but you were unlocking stuff. But here's the thing. If you don't have internet, you can't unlock any of it. Because with the Master Chief Collection, they hid all of the armor behind the Season Pass internet wall. Alright? So, whereas you could originally unlock points in the campaign in the original game, when you play the campaign in this, you unlock nothing. Unless you complete Season Pass, challenges with internet. So, in the original game, you could unlock armor without internet. This game, you need internet to be able to unlock armor. So, if you got internet, no problem. But if you're like I used to be, and you're someone who suffers with crappy internet, or more frequently, no internet, you're shit out of luck with this. And that's unfortunate. I mean, that really sucks when 343 Industries didn't take that into consideration. They literally made the armor unlocking system worse in the remaster than in the original. Why would you do that? Like, why? So, I was able to play this online, and I still have not been able to unlock half of the armor because of the season challenge requirements and whatnot. It's been kind of a slog to try and unlock a decent amount of armor pieces to make my Spartan my own, and that is unfortunate. Now, credit where credit's due. There are improvements with the remaster over the original. So, frame rate improvements. Absolutely. The game runs at a better frame rate than the original. And again, the game's better optimized, especially with like anti-aliasing. In the 360 version, even with the backwards compatible version on the Xbox One, you could see like the ragged tears along your arm with the anti-aliasing. This, because it was designed for 4K display and whatnot, anti-aliasing isn't such a huge issue. And that's really nice. You can kind of notice that really well with this remaster. The one problem, though, is that graphics do have a noticeable pop-in, especially with smaller items, like little tiny rocks on the ground. So you'll just be walking, and you'll see kind of like this screen door effect on these little tiny objects on the ground. And as you get closer, it pops in. It's like, oh, that was a little tiny rock. It looked like someone had patches of a screen door all over the area. And it's through the entire game. You see the screen door effect on faraway textures, and as you get closer in, they just pop in. And so that was unfortunate. And the other thing that really sucks with this is every time you hit a checkpoint, the game will slow down or just completely pause in the middle of the action, and then finally it'll pop up saying checkpoint reached, and then you'll go back into the action. It's like really annoying. I mean, granted, the game doesn't crash, but it feels like the game's going to crash when these checkpoints happen. And I gotta be honest, I don't remember this checkpoint freezing happen with the original Halo games on the 360. So I don't even remember seeing that happen on Xbox One with backwards compatibility. So maybe it does. If this has happened even with the 360 games on the 360, please mention it down in the comments below. But so that was disappointing, even though that may be an issue that's been prevalent with the series since the beginning. It shouldn't be happening for a last-gen game on a, at the time, current-gen system. Shouldn't be happening. Now, in terms of the way the levels were laid out, really nice level design and layout. I mean, essentially, if you remember from the very first Halo game, the second level, that huge, expansive, sprawling level, that's what every level in this game felt like. They felt giant and large, and a lot of these levels had multiple paths you could take. So you could go left, you could go right. Eventually, you'd have to come back around, but still, it was nice having the option of, okay, you want to take out the AA gun first, or go for communications first? Go for communications first, okay, go take out the AA gun. I mean, granted, it's still linear, but it had the illusion of feeling non-linear, and it was really nice that the level design had come so far from the horrific level design of the first Halo. Don't get me wrong, I love the art design, I love a lot of the levels, but the way the levels were laid out, especially with like the human and Covenant ships, was like laughably bad. So, they've really come a long way. And then another amazing aspect of this game is the art design. I mean, all of it is just visually stunning. Especially like scenes like the nightclub. There's a level where you go into a nightclub and it's just like really pops. They just really have some vibrant colors. And then like the background, wide spans, distances you see off in the distance are just at times breathtaking. I mean, they just really pop and really just like grab your attention. It's just like, wow, Reach is a really gorgeous skyline to look at. Now, one thing I was disappointed at was, for the most part, the musical score. I love Martin O'Donnell's musical score through the entire series. I mean, that first Halo soundtrack and even the second one are just legendary, mind-blowing. But this one, yes, there was a lot of really good musical tracks in this one, but there was just this one they kept playing over and over again. It felt like I was listening to a porno film, to be completely honest. I mean, just like, every time it kicked on, I just imagined seeing one of the 6 Spartans just like... But it was weird. Like, that track does not fit anywhere in the Halo universe, and I'm glad I have not heard it since. So... Now, probably the best part of the campaign is the story. I mean, I once saw an article talking about how the story was a perfect representation of 1 step forward, 2 steps back, especially with how the campaign led the heroes through the mission. I mean, if you know anything about Reach, you know that this is about the fall of Reach. You know that these Spartans are going to lose. Alright? Kind of like the story of 300. You know the 300 lost, but to see the journey there is kind of why you invest into that story. And so you know from the beginning that this team, Noble Team, is going to lose. And it's an interesting take on the Halo universe, to be quite honest. I mean, we always knew that, like, Master Chief was going to come out on top at the end with every one of his stories. I mean, yeah, they kind of tried making it seem like it wouldn't, but we all knew it. But with Noble Team, it's just like, we know they are going to ultimately fail. And it was kind of surprising to see that story unfold. It's just like, man, if they could have only rewound 5 minutes and told themselves this, they could have survived and probably won that fight. It's just kind of surprising seeing probably one of the darkest stories in the entire Halo franchise. So, now, something unusual with this story is that they do have like a Cortana like cameo, as it were, but it leaves a really big plot hole. Case in point, they insinuate that she's designed for this one reason. At the beginning of Halo 1, it's like, yeah, that reason was not the reason why she was made. It's just like, oh, she's just a standard on-ship AI, and at the end of this one, it was just like, oh yeah, she's meant to do this, this, and this. And she's like, really? I don't remember that from the beginning of Halo 1, so just kind of a plot hole there. And this was made by Bungie. It wasn't made by 343 Industries, so they should have known about this plot hole. Now, something I did like about this game was it was a better starting off point than the beginning of Halo 1. So one of my criticisms of the original Halo, if you've seen that review, is that Halo 1 just drops you in the deep end of the pool in terms of the story. It's just like, okay, so, do you know anything about the story? Absolutely not. Okay, we're just going to drop you in the deep end and hope you figure it out. It's just like, well, what? And so, luckily you do over time, but it's just so jarring how quickly they just shove you in the action. And Reach kind of helps that shove. If you start off with Reach, it'll still be a little unknown, like, okay, what's the Covenant? What's their purpose? I mean, okay, clearly they're the bad guys, but it does gently ease you into that deep end of the pool by the time you get to the opening of Halo 1. Also, this doesn't spoil anything for the first Halo, so that's nice. So if you're afraid that, well, I don't want to do this prequel because it might spoil something for me, you know, thankfully, this doesn't. You can play this, never have played Halo 1, and still be able to follow the story, still be able to have a good time. It's a pretty decent start-off point. Maybe not the best, but a pretty good one. Now, something I've had an issue with the entire series is the audio. Now, don't get me wrong. Voice acting's amazing. The music is legendary. Sound effects are great. Here's the issue. In almost every Halo game I've come across, I haven't really been able to control the audio level of like the music versus voice dialogue. And so with this game, I couldn't do that. And so there were scenes where people are explaining important details about the plot, and they're also explaining it over a cracked radio. So it's like, okay, you got this. Okay, so you need to pay attention to this right now and understand that what I'm about to tell you is really important. And all the while this is happening, the Halo orchestra is at 11, like, oh, and it's just like, what did they say? I mean, I couldn't hear them over the music, and this has been a problem ever since the second Halo. Okay, this was a serious problem with the second Halo. It was one of my biggest issues with the second Halo, and it's still a problem here. Well, I did find a solution, and that is headphones. So Xbox One has something called Microsoft Sonic or Windows Sonic, or like, I think it's Microsoft Sonic. And it's a spatial 3D audio program that's free with the Xbox One, Xbox Series S and X. And I only found out about this after I finished Halo Reach, but I went back, played a couple of levels with the headphones and the special 3D audio enabled through the controller. There's actually a port at the bottom of the controller right here. You can just plug in standard headphones and you can get full access to that 3D audio. You don't need a special expensive $200 headset. I mean, it'll help improve it quite a bit, but if you just have some cheap headphones lying around, you can enjoy that 3D audio just by plugging it right here. Same way as you can enjoy audio on PlayStation just by plugging it into the controller. So that's really nice. But when I tried it again with Halo Reach, going back into it, play a couple levels, it's just like, oh wow. So that's what they said. Okay. Now granted, audio's not perfect. It still has that leveling problem where the orchestral music is much higher than this. But because you can cancel out everything else out with the headphones, and it's a little bit crisper with the 3D audio, you can understand stuff a little bit better. And so I would recommend, if you want to follow the story, only play this with headphones, because unfortunately they don't have an option of turning down the music. It's great music, don't get me wrong, except for that one track I went over earlier. But we gotta be able to turn it down a little bit. I mean, you've been to a rock show where the guitarist is playing and you can't hear the lead singer at all because they have the audio turned up on the guitar way too much. It's like at every rock show, okay? Same problem here. You know, guitar riff's awesome, but I want to be able to hear the main singer as well. So, now inside the gameplay itself, the equipment has seen an improvement, and I like it better where you could actually have it part of your suit. And so there are times that some of the equipment, like with the cloaking, the decoy, the sprint function, it kind of helped make my Spartan feel a little bit more like a super soldier. But therein lies the problem. In this game, just like with the first and second game, my Spartan doesn't really feel like a super soldier. When he hits an enemy, they don't go flying, they just fall over. They can only carry 2 guns at a time. I understand them carrying every single gun when it makes sense, but I mean, being able to have like a pistol on your hip, a gun on your back, and then carrying a gun as your sidearm should have been a possibility, or having a gun on each limb should have been a possibility. I mean, these Spartans can lift thousands of pounds, so why not make them feel like a super soldier? But, you know, it's just same issue as before. My Spartan didn't really feel like a super soldier. The equipment helped a little bit, but it'd be nice if we finally got a Halo game where the Spartan you're playing as doesn't feel like just a normal human being that can float, jump a little bit higher, and flip vehicles back over. You know. Now, ultimately, with the campaign, there were 2 problems that happened towards the end. Weapons lose their potency as you get in the final level. So such earlier, if you're playing this game on normal, you could take down an elite soldier with about half a magazine. And in this, when you get to the later levels, you need a full magazine just to take down the shields, and then you need a full magazine to take the soldier down. And also, they get far more deadlier, and so it's almost like they start pushing you towards more legendary settings as you get towards the end of the campaign. And I get what they were trying to go for, but quite honestly, they should have just increased the soldier count, or, just had the normal difficulty a little bit more difficult, like they did in the Anniversary Edition of Halo. But, yeah, I just wasn't really happy with that. Now, that being said, the final level you absolutely play after the epilogue, it's pretty cool. Because it's essentially kind of like a horde level. Just like, okay, stay alive as long as possible. And so I like that. And then last but not least, Firefight is really fun to play around with. So if you don't have internet, you can still at least enjoy this game beyond with Firefight. Firefight is kind of like a horde mode where you can basically have waves of enemy coming at you and you try to stay alive. Obviously, it's funner with friends, but it is cool that you have access to all these maps and you can customize the horde mode. So if you want to just do rocket launchers only, you can. If you want unlimited ammo, you can. If you want to do assault rifle and battle rifle as your sniper, weapon, you can. If you want to do all Groots or all Grunts, you can. If you want to do all Brutes, you can. I mean, basically it's just whatever you want to do combat-wise, you can do it. And plus you get all of the levels, plus the level that came with Halo Anniversary. So on the 360 version, there was a special level they made for Halo Anniversary and Firefight. It was the only level available in that game, and it wasn't part of Reach. Well, they kind of combine those together now in the Master Chief Collection. So, all that being said, is Halo Reach worth getting? Well, if you're a Halo fan, absolutely. Despite its flaws, this was a really good game. I enjoyed the story, and I absolutely loved that I could customize how my main character could look. It's just some of the hoops you have to go through on this version to do that is a little ridiculous. So, is this worth getting by itself on the 360? Absolutely yes. Is this worth getting as a expansion on the Master Chief Collection? That depends. Do you have internet? Yes. But if you don't have internet, I would say stick with the 360 version. Because that way you can still enjoy the story and enjoy customizing your character how you're supposed to. So, yeah. So ultimately, I would say if you got the internet, absolutely get this on the Master Chief Collection. If you don't, get the 360 version and you can still play it backwards compatible on Xbox One. Just you need to be able to do that initial download online, but you can do that at a friend's house or a lounge or whatnot. So anyway, that's been my review of Halo Reach on the Master Chief Collection. My name's Christopher Connor with 11th Hour Reviews, and that is all.